Good morning.
I want to tell you how I have prepared myself to hit the ground running as Miss America and make an immediate impact on the AIDS epidemic in our country. I have volunteered in San Francisco at several hospices. I have educated myself at the Centers for Disease Control on the mechanics of the epidemic, and I have collaborated with national policymakers in Washington, including President Clinton's AIDS czar, Sandy Thurman, so that I can start Sunday morning to change the way America looks at AIDS and how it affects us in return.
Hi, Catherine. I'll start with a question for you. I noticed that you've lived in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Did you go to school at this school, Bishop
Eustace?
Yes. Is that here in New Jersey?
Yes, it is. It's in Pennsauken.
Okay. My question to you is, coming from the Midwest, did you notice some differences in your lifestyle or anything that was maybe shocking to you, having lived in the Midwest, coming to the East Coast, lifestyle changes?
Well, a little bit, because I grew up in New Jersey. I was born in Ohio, but I grew up in New Jersey. So actually, I was familiar with the East Coast mentality and then went back to the Midwest where it was so much more laid back in general. The thing is that Northwestern is really close to Chicago, which is a very alive city. So while I've noticed that the Midwest in general has sort of a more relaxed atmosphere, I was also close enough to the city to sort of be right in the middle of things, and I haven't had any regrets.
I'm curious as to why your double major choices, theater and sociology. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, theater is what I love, and it's what I want to do with my life, but I've always been interested in analyzing. And I became interested in sociology when I got to Northwestern and started taking a couple of classes in it. And I decided to pick up the major for a number of reasons. What happened once I started taking sociology classes was that I realized that in theater, we're always working on choices and living in other people's environments and trying to acquaint ourselves with them. So sociology has the same kind of principles behind it, but it provides the theory for me so that I can do the practice once I get on the stage. And I guess if theater doesn't work out for me, I can always, have something to fall back on and have my degree and maybe go to grad school and then study why people fail at their chosen careers.
Catherine, concerning your platform issue, AIDS prevention, is it more important that you educate on the various methods and importance of safe sex or abstinence?
Well, abstinence, I think, is always the first thing that needs to be educated about because, of course, it is the only way to completely prevent oneself from contracting HIV. The problem is that our young people are sexually active. The Centers for Disease Control just released a statistic that 70% of teenage girls and 80% of teenage boys are engaging in sexual activity. And unfortunately, although I would like to believe that we could convince all these people to go to abstinence, I think that we have to meet them where they are and try to educate them about how to make their established behaviors safer while educating younger people on the safest type of sexual behavior before they actually start.
So, Catherine, would you condone giving condoms out in school?
I do. And it was a tough decision for me because I went to Catholic school. My family is very religious, and I know that they don't want me having sex. I know that parents and administrators in schools don't want to believe that their kids are doing this. But the way I reconcile it with my own moral code is that it's a necessary evil. And I think that even if young people may be making what we consider to be a mistake in their lives, they shouldn't have to pay with their lives.
I'm curious about your Jersey State delegate thing. What was the most impacting moment of that?
Well, the Girls State program is terrific because it focuses on exposing young women to politics. And ironically, it sounds sort of silly, but the thing that I learned about government there is how political it is. I thought, if I go in and I run for an office and I write a good speech, people will support me, they'll like my ideas. But I didn't realize all of the networking that goes on. And that's something that was reinforced this summer when I was in Washington. I never quite realized just how political that town is. So that was the thing that I remember most.
Catherine, other than Tara Dillon Holland, can you name 3 former Miss Americas?
Certainly. Debbie Maffitt was the first Miss America when I first moved to New Jersey, the one that I became aware of. Marjorie Vincent was one of our hostesses at State this year, and then immediately following her was Leanza Cornett, who also worked on AIDS.
If you had $1,000, would you be a gambler and play the stocks, or would you tend to be a little bit more conservative and invested in a low-interest savings account?
Well, my father's a stockbroker, so hopefully I'd get some good advice. I know that he is fairly conservative as far as putting money away. When my parents first got married, they spent 5 years investing their money in things like the electric company, which would sort of be stable, or Disney, which is something that's always around. So I would probably be a little more conservative. I don't mind taking risks, but if it was $1,000 that I thought I had something I'd like to spend it on, I'd want to be careful with it.
Catherine, if you were to cast yourself into the role of a famous historical character, who would you choose and why?
I think I would choose Martin Luther King, because I am working to change attitudes that people in society have about different communities and about a virus which affects different communities and puts forth a group of stereotypes which aren't necessarily accurate. And I think that I have a lot to learn from his work and from his ideals.
Do you think that because of the new developments in AIDS, like the protease inhibitors, that some people think, well, it's not so serious anymore, we sort of have it under control, that there's a new complacency?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think that we're at a crossroads right now in AIDS work, because we can either acknowledge that we've made some progress and that we still have a lot of progress left to make, or we can fall back a few steps and have to fight our way back up the hard way again by having, a disease which devastates our community and causes deaths. The new drugs are wonderful, but there are a number of drawbacks to them. They're not universally effective. I've learned that only about 40% of people respond to them. They're prohibitively expensive. They can cost up to $12,000 a year. And it can involve taking 20 to 40 pills a day. And the HIV virus mutates so quickly that missing even one dose can allow it to develop a resistance. So while we can be optimistic and see the light at the end of the tunnel, we also have to realize that there's a lot of darkness that's going to come before that light.
Catherine, you seem like a woman who likes to be taken seriously, and I'm just interested in what you think of the decision at the pageant this year to expand the swimsuit competition to probably enhance the sex appeal a little bit by allowing women to wear heels and to wear two-piece suits.
Well, honestly, I agree with all of the choices that they've made. I'm wearing a two-piece myself because I went shopping for a swimsuit and I saw this suit and I put it on and it made me feel good, and I thought, if I don't buy this for competition, I'm going to buy it for myself. And then, wake up, I realized that that's exactly what they're trying to do this year. I do like wearing shoes again. The bare feet may be natural, but honestly, we're on a stage and we want to look our best. And having that line, even someone as tall as I am, needs a little bit of a lift to really look my best.
Catherine, what puts you in a bad mood? What drives you crazy?
People that don't listen, which is one of the things that I know I'm going to have to deal with in the coming year, because I work so hard on my communication skills and I want to be able to relate to people on a level at which they will understand me. I know that people that don't quite get my message are not always to blame for that, and sometimes I need to adjust my message to reach them.
Catherine, what's the most ridiculous advice you've ever received that made you laugh or shrug or was totally silly?
Well, I wouldn't say, the thing that comes to mind is not necessarily advice, but the rumor mill that starts in a theater department. And people, I was auditioning for a show this past spring, and they were everybody was talking about who was going to get the chosen roles. And somebody finally said to me, once I had gotten a little caught up in all the rumors, they said, the only thing that people remember about rumors is that once everything's over, you go back and say, well, that was really ridiculous. So, advice from people saying, well, don't bother trying to get this role because she's already got it, was a problem for me, but then it turned into some of the best advice I've ever gotten.
Catherine, do you have a dark side? And if so, what does this dark side try to convince you of?
I have always been sort of insecure growing up because of my height, and I've realized that I don't necessarily fit in every environment because sometimes I'm taller than other people. In junior high, for example, I was really insecure because all the boys, obviously, were shorter than I was. That was fighting that tendency within myself and learning to like myself as I got to college and to take the attributes of my height and use them to my advantage has been one of the best things I've done, but it's come out of a very dark part of my earlier life.
If the Pope promised he would do one thing you asked him to do, what would you ask?
I think I would ask him to reconsider his stance on birth control. The Catholic Church, and I know as a member of the Catholic Church, has always looked down on contraception as part of their dogmas. But the Bishops' Council has been fairly proactive in isolating certain issues that need to be addressed and adjusting the message accordingly. I think that with so much of the world engrossed in this virus, we really need to take a look at how we can make behaviors safer, and the Pope could go a long way towards promoting not only compassion towards people with AIDS, but ways in which they could protect themselves better.
Good timing. Our time for questions just ran out. Is there anything else you'd like to say that we haven't covered thus far?
I want to share with you an experience that I had this past spring, which changed the way I look at the AIDS epidemic. I chose to spend my spring break in San Francisco, volunteering with some other students, and we worked at some hospices and a day center for impoverished people living with AIDS. But we also volunteered at the Names Project, and we were helping to photograph the AIDS quilt. Working with the quilt is an unbelievably moving experience because, well, first of all, you're told that each panel is 3 feet by 6 feet, which is the size of a grave. And in addition to that, you're continually exposed to all the different ways in which people can sum up a life onto a piece of cloth. And I can't tell you how it makes me feel to hoist up this platform and see that it's all pink and blue because it's all for children who have died. I think that the panel that I remember the best is one of the simplest I saw. And it was all in block letters, and it was something someone had made for himself. And he said, "No, my name is such and such. I was diagnosed with AIDS on this date, and I was 22 years old, and if you're reading this, I am dead. And that's why I'm doing this, and that's why I need your help."
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Judges, Miss North Carolina.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
I'm good. A little bit nervous, but excited to be here. We've traveled for about a week and a half now, and so the competition's about to start. I'm very excited to be here, and at this time I'll just open myself up for questions. Please be good to me.
Hi, Michelle. I'm wondering about your platform issues, domestic violence, obviously a very resonant issue in today's society. Is there a specific reason why you're passionate about this issue? What draws you into that? Why are you hooked into that?
Well, I'm trying not to spotlight too much my reasoning behind getting involved with domestic violence because it is a personal issue with me. And I had to work as an individual to overcome a lot of things that I have dealt with personally, which makes me perfect for that position because I can identify, and a lot of times when you've been victimized with things, it's difficult to go in and give advice unless you've been in the same shoes. So I've done a lot in the amount of time that I've had to work with my issue, but I'm excited to go back as Miss North Carolina or as Miss America and give my platform a lot more.
Michelle,
Yes.
what qualities in your personality do you feel would make you a good child psychologist?
Well, I'm very understanding, very intuitive. I do love children. I have a love for children. And I think that I understand. I'm very compassionate, too.
What's the most important quality that you look for in a friend, in a friendship?
Honesty. I think honesty just is a good display that I can trust someone. I moved around a lot growing up, so it was difficult for me to form lasting relationships with someone, and I look for that trust.
And what makes you a good friend?
The fact that I am honest. If I don't like what you're wearing, I'll tell you. You know, if I don't like something, I'm just very open. I also have a great sense of humor when I'm not as nervous as I am right now, but I'm very fun and very laid back, very easygoing and real.
How did the outcome of the O.J. Simpson trial affect you personally?
Well, I think I was a little saddened by the fact that he did get off the hook, so to speak. I heard a comment in a movie once that there are no
rich people on death row or in prison because they can find a way to get out of it. But it did shed a lot of new light on domestic violence. I was very pleased with the fact that it was a spotlight
Michelle,
in
what
that
did
scheme of things.
you do on the multi-county domestic violence task force?
Well, that was set up to go into junior high and high schools, and they used me as a, to identify with youth and to see what would be effective, what would be the most effective way to go into young people to speak with them about violence and dating relationships and how to communicate with each other.
What has made us such a violent society?
Wow. I would say the number one issue would be the entertainment business. I think we have so much violence in our movies and television, our sports. I went to NASCAR. I went to a NASCAR race from North Carolina, and the most exciting part of that was when there was a wreck. And I just think that we tend to glamorize violence.
Michelle, how...
TV rating system is a good idea.
I'm sorry, can you
TV
repeat that?
rating system, do you think that's a good
I
idea?
think it's a great idea. I've got little siblings. I've got a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old, going on 30, who come in every afternoon to watch that television. And sometimes I'm horrified at the things that they see as far as talk shows.
Michelle, how different is the woman we see before us today and when you kick off your shoes and you're just around your friends?
Well, I think I'm getting more comfortable with you now. I am not a pageant girl. I've not grown up doing pageants. It's very new to me. I went to my state one time. I am real. I am very charismatic when I'm very down to earth. And I just like to have fun. I'm very normal.
How do you feel about, back to the rating system, in music now, there's a lot of attention being paid to lyrics in music, gangster rap and all that kind of thing. How do you feel about censorship in records, and do you think that what the children listen to on these records really has the power that some people give it, or do you think that the damage comes from other sources?
Well, as I said before, I have a younger sibling that's 14 years old who's very influenced with the type of music, and I remember being that age and being very much influenced, a lot more so than I am now. And I think that the lyrics, the rating, when they have, the parent discretion advised on the lyrics, I think that is very good. I don't think they need to be censored as much. I think the parents need to be more involved with what their children are listening to.
Michelle, what's your vocal selection?
I'm doing And I Am Telling You from Dreamgirls, and I do it very well. I know a lot of people, I get this look when I tell people I'm doing And I'm Telling You. They go, that's good. But I really do. I enjoy my talent.
Does the public have the right to know everything about a celebrity's personal life?
Oh, no. No, they really don't. But I think it's good to be aware that when you place yourself in a celebrity status, to be aware that that is going to happen, that is a part of being a celebrity.
If you were to invite 3 people to dinner from history, who would you invite?
3 people. Well, recent history, Charles Kuralt, he recently passed away. I did get to meet him once, and I would have loved to have had more time to spend with him. I've always been intrigued with Marilyn Monroe, and I would also like to have Billie Holiday. I really love her music.
Is there one teacher that you've had elementary school through college that has really made a difference in your life? And why has that person made a difference?
Yes, I had a high school teacher, English and literature, who was very instrumental. She placed me in advanced placement, and before I had always been very average. I did move around a lot, and education was difficult for me. And it wasn't that I was dumb, I just had a hard time with the learning and the testing. But she really encouraged me to read and told me that I was good at my thought processes were very good, and just placed me in a group higher.
Do you think Paula Jones should be able to sue President Clinton while he's still in office?
No, I don't. I think her timing I'm very skeptical of her timing. I do believe that the president is above all under the law as a citizen of the United States, but I very much question her motive behind what she's going after.
Do you, recently in the news I read about a case involving 4 teenagers that had been involved in a scuffle with some other teenagers over some marijuana, I believe, and there was a penknife involved, and 2 teenagers got stabbed, and one of them died, just by chance at the penknife, and it was this scuffle that nobody really knew what happened, and there were either 3 or all 4 of these boys, and only one of them actually had the penknife, were sentenced to life imprisonment, and one of them is underage and will serve in a youth facility until he turns 18, and then go to a maximum security. And the judge, used zero tolerance and wanted to make an example out of him. How do you feel about zero tolerance in general for first-time offenders?
Well, I'm a big believer in circumstances. I think each criminal act or each situation that's brought before judges is very circumstantial. I think that they should take into account, previous acts of violence, their age. I believe that with counseling, teenagers can recover to have a normal life.
If you were to decide on the new punishment for convicted murderers, other than life imprisonment or the death penalty, what would you choose?
A lot of manual labor. I like the idea of the work boot camp style of imprisonment, where they're not playing basketball or bodybuilding, where they're just really putting to work. I mean, there are tons of things to do. I've done work with Habitat for Humanity, and I've seen Habitat go into prisons and put the people to work building homes for people, and I think it's good.
I see you were sponsored by Miss Appalachian Valley.
Yes.
Now, when we say Appalachian Valley, we all sort of get this idea in our head about, are there particular domestic issues that happen in Appalachian Valley?
Yes, as far as my platform issue domestic situation.
Yeah, is Appalachian Valley an impoverished area, or is that a stereotype that we might have?
I think it's a stereotype. I think the mountains of western North Carolina are a lot rich with natural resources, and people make a living off those natural resources. They do a lot of granite mining. It's the shrubbery capital of the world. Up there, we produce more Christmas trees. And tobacco farming is a big deal up there. So there are a lot of industries. Crafts are huge. There's a lot of money in the mountains. People are very misguided.
So multi-county domestic violence task force.
Right.
What did it accomplish?
Well, it's still in the works. It will go into effect when school starts this year. What it accomplished is just building awareness within the community to realize that domestic violence can only be conquered with education and cooperation within the community.
Tell us about being a waitress. What's the worst thing about it, and what's the most entertaining thing about it?
The great thing about being a waitress is it was great for me. I was very shy in high school, and to come out of my shell, I'm amazed that I'm standing here doing this right now. But waitressing forced me to talk to people and be comfortable with other people. It taught me a lot of patience. When people got angry with me, all I could do was smile and just continue to be nice. So it taught me a lot of self-control.
How do you resolve the conflict between anti-smoking forces and coming from a tobacco state?
I don't really take the position to resolve that conflict. If I could, I probably would be making a lot more money just doing that and not being Miss North Carolina. My stand on tobacco is I think people need to take personal responsibility for their actions.
That's all the time we have for questions. I'm sorry. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered so far?
No, I think you did a great job. My favorite part is stage. So I'm really looking forward to being on stage and performing.
We look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Arizona.
Hi, Stacy. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Stacy Momeyer, and I have to share with you that my family thinks that I should be Miss America simply for the fact that I was born the 4th of July, 1976. But I'm here to prove to you that I do have the qualifications necessary, because I have a mission to impact the lives of America's youth. And I think it's important that we discuss 3 things today: the journey that brought me here, my personal declaration of independence, and the exciting and recent developments in my platform. So let's begin.
Stacy, good morning.
Good morning.
So my first question isn't going to be about any of those.
Okay.
I'm curious, since you were a postal clerk, and postal clerks don't always have the best reputation. Well, I'm just curious what you've learned about people from being a postal clerk.
That job was definitely a character builder. It was a very good experience for me. I actually started in a Hallmark store that has a contract station, but I was in charge of the postal station. And it was very interesting to me, the different personalities that come to the postal window. They seem a little hostile, and maybe at times I would go postal. But let me tell you, I enjoyed that job. I really enjoyed that job. And a lot of elderly people, the poster window draws elderly people. It's like the social room or something. But the neatest thing was I developed relationships that would last for years to come with some of my the customers. And I had customers that came to Miss Arizona that I have met since I was 16 years old. So it was an exciting job.
Stacy, I noticed that you performed in the opera, The Dialogues of the Carmelites.
Yes.
That's a pretty heavy-duty opera. Which part did you portray, and how did you prepare for that role?
I was Sister Blanche. The opera is about nuns that are martyred for their faith during the French Revolution, and I was the lead. And she basically flees to the convent out of fear because she's struggling with the pressures, and her father doesn't want her to fall in love or any of that, so they protect her by putting her in the convent. But she goes through a maturation process and ends up really dying for her faith because it was her faith. But all the time that everyone else is convinced that they need to be martyred for their faith, she's not so sure, and she actually flees and returns. And at the end, we were beheaded, so it was a very interesting role, to say the least.
Stacy, I noticed that this internet mentoring program, K through Grade, I'm curious about this and if you're a online computer literate person yourself.
I am very much involved with Pueblo K through Grade, but I had just used the internet a few times with some school projects. I am not, your computer geek or whatever. In fact, my dear friend works in the computer lab, and I told him of this involvement that I'm having with this program, and I said, "You've seen me in the computer lab. It's not a pretty sight." But the reason that this is so important, if I can learn the internet and I can learn to be a mentor online, I'm convinced anyone can. And I have been gaining proficiency. And I've been taking this program into nursing homes, and to see the elderly people using their motor skills, using their mentor skills, and their mental skills, and they're getting online as well. So if I can do it, if the elderly people can do it, America can do it, and I want to bring visibility to
Stacy,
that.
tell me about K through Grade. What is that?
K through Grade is an internet program that we are linking to schools and individual classrooms across the nation. We then also go to nursing homes and different mentors from all aspects of life and engage them in getting online with classrooms.
Fabulous.
So what does K through Grade mean?
K through Grade is kind of our motto, that we're not going to put isms on our computer internet life, that there's not going to be ageism, racism, or sexism. We want to involve young and old.
Stacy, there were three very prominent figures in our world who have recently passed on the past 2 weeks: Princess Diana, Mother Teresa, and just yesterday, Mobutu, the Zairian president. And I was wondering if you could just give me one quality of each of these people that you feel has had an impact on our society.
Well, first with Princess Diana, that she really took the position that she had, and she used it selflessly to give of herself to other people. And so I will remember her for that. Mother Teresa, the same thing. What an inspiration that she would remain so humble and keep in poverty just to love the people that were around her. And of the third choice, I was not aware that the president of Zaire had passed away, so I can't comment on that.
Okay, do you have any knowledge of what he did for his country?
I did not. I do not.
Thanks.
What about Gianna Versace?
Tragic again, once again. His loss, his talents. I mean, that's just such a unnecessary death.
Why do you think the youth of today feel such mediocrity?
Why do the youth today
Why do
face?
they feel like they feel that there's not much going on in the world, so that they are
I think that our society is tolerant of mediocrity. I really do. I think a lot of people just try to get by and do the best they can. And I think with my generation being labeled Generation X, there's been a negative connotation that our society has sent out. So I'm trying to say, I expect excellence. I am labeling you a generation of excellence, and I'm going to ensure a hand in your success and try to raise up an army that will help you do the same. But that's why, because our society allows mediocrity.
Could you tell us a little bit about your goal-setting workshop that you formulated?
Yes, I have a goal-setting worksheet, and basically it's a worksheet that allows a student to start the process of critical thinking. I ask them questions like, What are your goals? What skills are you going to need to accomplish that? Where are you going to get those skills? Who is going to be your support system? What are you going to have to sacrifice? Let me just give you a quick example. I'm a vocal performance major. If someone would have told me when I was 10, 12 years old that I would have to be piano proficient to be a singer, I would have been in those lessons. And now I've had to really struggle through my proficiency and practice so hard. And I speak to students all the time and say, I want to be an NBA star. Great, but how are you going to get there? You're going to need an education. You're going to practice. So that's what I'm trying to start, the critical thinking.
As far as your career ambition, it says to perform professionally, I assume that means vocally, and or teach at the university level. Which of these are you passionate about? Which one are you?
I'm passionate about both. In the next 10 years, I really want to perform. But you know what? The one thing that I've never had, that I want more than anything, is a united home, a united family. So when it's time for me to have a family and start having children, I think I would pursue teaching at the university level instead of performing, because I have to keep my family intact.
If you could be any performer, any I assume musical performer for a week, who would it be?
Mariah Carey. I love opera, and I just think their voices are divine, but what a fun job. It looks like that would be a lot of fun.
What about Mariah Carey? Why would you want to be here for a week?
I think she's young and beautiful. She gives inspiration and even a sense of purity to the whole rock and roll image. But she has a good time, and that girl can sing. I would love to be able to sing like that.
Stacy, you wanted to tell us about your journey to be where you are right this minute, and link that journey to the Miss America journey that became yours.
Well, as I told you, the journey started July 4th. I always joke that my mother knew I was going to be a firecracker, and I've lived up to that. But the journey started from my first day of life because I came home to a single-parent home. And my father had decided to end my parents' marriage when my mother was 4 months pregnant with me. So day one was challenging. And the only reason I bring that up, I think it's important that you know that I know the value of a mentor. I stand before you today because I had caring adults that surrounded me and encouraged me to develop my talents. And that's the only reason I tell you that. But then the journey would begin, and I would start developing my talents and then be approached to start the Miss America program. It wasn't a lifelong pageant experience. It began with developing my talents. I know you're looking for a well-rounded young woman, and I hope that I can show you that I am that.
Stacy, since you were the benefit of mentoring yourself, you must have gotten all kinds of advice. What was the most ridiculous advice you ever got?
Oh. I'm not sure. The most ridiculous advice I got?
Funny or useless or...
Well, recently I was giving a presentation and someone came up to me afterwards and said, you're public speaking, you're doing very well, but you need to just watch this verb and this verb, and she was kind of correcting my English, and I thought, well, that's good advice, thank you very much. Well, I was telling my trainer about it when we were working out, and he said, that happened to me too when I was speaking, and I told the lady, thank you for your comments, but I'm so sorry you didn't hear what I was saying, because if you would have saw my heart, you wouldn't have worried about the grammar. So really, that's great advice, but it's kind of silly because I want to show you my heart, not just my vocabulary.
Stacy, what do you think about the move to try to censor some music lyrics?
I completely support that. I'm very much in the belief that what you put in will come out. We need more positive going in. We need to monitor the lyrics.
How do you feel about if you take that to an eventual outcome? Do you feel there's a danger inherent in censoring any art that comes out? Do you feel like there's maybe a future down the road that's not good that could be a result of that?
I think that we make an excuse when we say we would tarnish an art form because we would be careful that we didn't give negativity in that expression. So I'm not very tolerant of that. I think that we can preserve art and preserve a positive message as well.
Does the public... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, what about art such as Michelangelo or Picasso that in its time was considered obscene and now is recognized as brilliant?
Well, that art has enhanced our culture, and I'm thankful for it. It's very difficult because everybody has their own interpretation of what art is.
Exactly.
So I just have to go against my moral code of what I choose to deem as art.
Good timing. Your time is up for questions. Is there anything...
You're joking!
It's fast, isn't it? Is there anything you want to talk to us about that we haven't covered thus far?
I wanted you to know on my fact sheet it mentions that I've been working with the Governor's Office for Women on domestic violence. Arizona has a state platform in addition to our personal platforms, and every title holder is required to speak in the community and to educate on domestic violence. And this has been a real honor for me because as women, to be able to take a stand on an issue like that is really important, that I can make a difference. So know that Arizona is starting a relationship with the Governor's Office that all women in the program will speak and educate on domestic violence. That is part of my duties as well. Anything else I'd like you to know? Just that I'm very serious about applying for this job, and I hope that you will consider me. Thank you. I've had a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I may not look or sound like I'm from the movie Fargo, but I am from Fargo, North Dakota. My mother was born in Japan and my father was born in Iran. But I was born here in New Jersey and raised in North Dakota. I've been privileged to teach English in Japan, to study in France, and to attend a little Norwegian college where I got my degree. In all of these experiences, I am overwhelmed with the diversity of our culture. I'm now open to your questions.
Roxanna, I'll go first. And I was going to ask you about the movie Fargo, because that's an impression now that many Americans have of life in Minnesota and North Dakota. And I'm just interested in what your opinion is of the movie.
My first impression was that it was a very violent movie, and we as North Dakotans are not that violent, because in fact, we are the safest state in the nation. However, it was also humorous because it took scenes from our everyday lives and exaggerated them, such as scraping ice off of the windows or watching hockey games. And so I just couldn't help but laugh.
The combination of Iran and Japanese is one of the most unusual. I've been to both countries, and it's absolutely an unusual combination. Does one culture dominate over the other in your household?
No, actually, both of my parents have taught me different values, and they both bring both of their backgrounds into our family. So I'm able to eat food from different countries, listen to music from different countries, and get ideas from both of my parents.
When your parents were dating, how did their families feel about their possible union? Were there, some tensions there, or was everyone really happy?
There were definitely some tensions, and it's actually a very interesting story that my dad wrote a book about.
Oh,
yes.
What was the book called?
It's called The Labyrinth. And my mother's family did not like my father at all because he was a foreigner in Japan, and he was teaching my mother English. And so they forbid her to see him. And what she did was one day she went to work with a little suitcase, and she didn't go back home. She ran off to Iran and got married. But today, both of the families get along well.
And how did she adjust to that culture?
She had been very protected as a child, and even when she left, she was about 25 years old, and her parents treated her like a young child. So she was very glad to get out of Japan and to be able to speak her mind more freely.
Do you think it's more of fear or more of ignorance that keep people from being more accepting of the other cultures?
I think it is fear that leads to ignorance, because people are afraid of that which they do not know.
Roxanna, I'm looking at your other accomplishments, and I'm trying to decide if I have a list this long that would encompass my entire life. Tell me, from what, if you could put it into words, from what world do you draw the discipline and the energy necessary to pursue all these activities?
A great influence comes from my parents, who have always influenced me to do my best and to get good grades and to get involved. And I've also noticed that I'm a happier person when I'm busy and I get to meet new people and learn new things.
What was the biggest effect on you during the North Dakota flood, during the flood during this past year?
I was able to talk with people who were evacuated from Grand Forks because of the great flood there and the fire. And so it really touched me to be able to go and speak with them at the Salvation Army and the other headquarters about their disaster and what they had lost. What they really wanted was companionship, and so I was able to provide them with some of that.
Roxanna, what are 3 things you love about yourself?
I'm curious, I'm humorous, and I'm reflective. I like to ask a lot of questions, and I also like to think about my life. I don't want to go through life as if it's just a routine and that I'm oblivious to a greater purpose of life.
Roxanna, when you're with your friends, what do you do for fun?
Well, Fargo can be very cold, so we have to go indoors often. We go to movies, we go shopping, or we just have little get-togethers.
Did you watch television as you were growing up?
Yes, but not very much.
Favorite show?
Seinfeld.
Really multicultural. Roxanna, you know, one of this country's great embarrassments, I think, in looking back, was when they interred Japanese Americans during World War II. After all, you're part Japanese American, you know. Was there any sort of fear during the Iranian conflicts that any of this would be repeated? How did you view the behavior then and the behavior during the Iranian War?
During the Iranian War, I did not face any discrimination, but my father told me that he would not tell people about where he came from because he thought people would look down on him. And the problem that I did come up to was during the war in Kuwait. And when people found out I was from Iran, they would laugh and say, "Oh, are you related to Saddam Hussein?" And I just wanted to say, well, wrong country, and second of all, no, he's not my grandfather.
Can you tell us about your talent that you chose?
Yes, it's a classical piano piece by Rachmaninoff. It starts off very calm and smooth and quiet, and it builds up the tension until the end, and there's a loud boom.
Why did you choose that piece? Does it reflect your personality in any way?
It does, because I have very many different moods, and I can be quiet, but yet I can also be very exciting.
Roxanna, if you were in a situation where you were listening to some speech at a public dinner and you happened to be seated, the person who was giving the talk told a racially discriminatory joke and then came back down and he was sitting next to you at the table, would you say something to him, or would you, so it's a formal situation, it's not just a casual situation or a friend, but how would you approach that?
I would say, I didn't understand the joke, could you please explain it to me? And in explaining that joke, he or she would probably see that it's very stupid to make fun of other cultures.
And the schools doing their part to improve cultural appreciation?
I think it depends on the school. Some schools have certain cultural diversity programs. Some schools invite parents in of their children to speak to the students about different backgrounds. But I think it's important to incorporate cultural appreciation into every aspect of classroom activities.
What do you think of the new tough immigration laws that this country is enacting?
It's necessary to have tough immigration laws. Because last year, we had over 900,000 legal immigrants come to the United States and 300,000 illegal immigrants, which means 25% of the immigrants who came were illegal. And we need to step up our border patrol and provide the INS with more money to do their job.
So then you only feel that immigrants who have a professional background should come here, and people just seeking a better life shouldn't be able to come here because they will let them in?
I believe that we should open our doors first to people who are refugees, asylees, people who have a professional background, and those who have immediate family members in the United States.
Roxanna, as a journalist, as a potential journalist, and as somebody who believes in cultural diversity in this country, Why would you choose to go overseas to be a foreign news correspondent rather than doing your work here in this country and using that as your way of reporting on the cultural issues here?
I would actually like to work both in the United States and in French-speaking nations. However, if I work out of France, I will be able to share as accurately and fairly as possible perceptions of foreigners to the people of the United States.
What past historical event would you like to have covered, and what do you think you could have brought to that coverage?
During my lifetime or any time? I would have liked to have been with Charles Darwin when he wrote The History of Evolution of Mankind, and to see people's reactions to that book.
What qualities do you think you possessed that would make you a good Miss America or continue being a good Miss North Dakota?
I'm down to earth, and I'm genuine. I really care about people. I believe that Miss America is a job that I am well qualified for, and I believe that many of the women here are qualified for this job. However, I'm disciplined, I'm motivated, and I'm a communicator. I want to learn and I want to teach, and I realize that as Miss America, I can speak to many people about cultural appreciation and other important issues.
Our time is up for questions. Is there anything else you want to talk to us about that we haven't covered thus far?
That went quickly. Yes. When I speak of cultural appreciation and cultural diversity, I realize that many people give it a negative connotation because they might think of immigration or welfare reform or quotas. While all of those aspects are important, I prefer to look at the celebratory side. I want people to be all that they can be by celebrating in cultural diversity. I want them to be able to learn from our differences and understand that we are all similar because we are all human beings. And I think that when people realize this, they will be able to lead richer and fuller lives and to be able to treat other people as equals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Hello. Good morning.
Harold, this is Miss Wisconsin.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. I would like to share with you a few experiences that I've had in my life that have greatly affected who I am and how I view my world. One of those is my parents' divorce when I was 9 years old. It taught me to be independent and compassionate at a very young age. Another experience was living abroad in France for a year, and that really taught me how to communicate and compromise with people from another culture. So I'm open to answer questions about those or any other topics you'd like to talk about.
Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning.
When children first discover that their parents are going to be divorced, what's the first thing they need to hear?
They need to, first of all, not hear about the divorce until this is final, this is permanent, this is something that's actually going to happen, because too many times kids hear parents fight and then maybe we're going to get a divorce or maybe we're not. Well, the point is children need to have all the facts straight out as soon as the parents know them.
What do you wish that your parents had done differently, perhaps?
Well, that's really the beauty of my program, because I honestly feel like I was very lucky. My father is a psychotherapist and my mother also works in the social work field. So they knew things ahead of time to do for me to make sure that my adjustment from a nuclear family into two single-parent families was smooth.
What was that specifically?
Specifically, it dealt with getting therapy for me, and my parents as well went through some things so that I had a safe place to say, well, you know, I'm not sure if I want to live with my dad, or I'm not sure if I want to live, you know.
You're how old? I'm sorry.
I was 9.
Okay.
They got separated when I was 7, and then the divorce was finalized when I was 9.
Did the divorce affect you immediately, or have you noticed that it's affected you more as you've gotten older? And also, how did it affect your siblings?
See, that's a very important point, I think, because at 9 years old, I was cool with it. It was really funny. I was in 3rd grade, and my parents had fought the night before. It was the first time that they had really ever had a fight. And I went to school, and I just did not want to go out for recess that day. I was like, no way, I'm sitting in, I was going to hide in the coat rack. Well, I heard this other little girl go and tell on me, and I could hear the the teacher's footsteps coming at me, and I was like, oh no. So she opens the closet, she looks at me, and I burst out in tears, and she's like, why are you crying? And I said, my parents are getting a divorce. And I used it as a manipulative tool because I didn't really know what divorce was. I didn't really care. I didn't know that how it would affect my life. I thought it was kind of cool that my mom had her own apartment and my dad had his own place. But my brother and my sister were drastically affected by it. They felt very betrayed, I think. And luckily they have overcome that. They're both successful adults and successfully married. But that's only because my parents are so good at communicating. They were so good at saying, let's talk about this. I don't care if you want to go hide in your room. We're going to talk about this right now.
Nicole, I come from what you might call a dysfunctional family. I guess that's sort of a catchphrase today, but it's true. And my parents stayed together through the time that I went through high school and all through adolescence. And but there was sort of an air of a Cold War, and there wasn't much communication, there wasn't much intimacy. In your opinion, in those situations, is a child better served by the parents getting a divorce, or by staying together just for the kids when their relationship might really be bad?
Well, I guess you have a question that answer that question better than I do, but I really think that if there's any sort of abuse going on, if there's any sort of alcoholism or any other disease going on, you need to separate the children from that. You need to be part of two single-parent families, because I think sometimes those situations don't deal with the relationship between the parent and the child. They deal with the relationship between the two parents, and they need to be distinct and separated. If it's just a matter of two parents who don't get along, and that's kind of what you're phrasing as being dysfunctional, then I think the parents need to go into some kind of therapy and work this out, because you can't walk away from a commitment like that.
Nicole, a lot of states are making divorce, they're changing their divorce laws to make a divorce harder to obtain. Do you favor that?
Yes, I do, because there are catchphrases in most of those laws saying if there is any abuse going on, that woman has the right to get out, or the man has the right to get out. I think that's important. Anything that is going to keep those family values intact and force people to take a look and make sure that they know their actions have consequences is important in this country.
Nicole, can you tell us about your experience in France?
Sure. I lived in Aix-en-Provence. It's in the south of France for a year. Went to a French university, which was an absolute shock to me, because I'm like, oh, I'm going to probably speak English. I'll be okay anyway. Well, I get there, and we had a very intensive 4-week language study course. Could not speak a lick of French by the end of it still, and I had taken French for a while. And then I went and started in my classes with all the French students, and I did not get any respect from any of those people, any of the teachers, anything, until I learned how to speak French. And then when I would go into the bakery or whatever and say, may I have some bread in their language, they were like, oh yeah, sure, you want some, go with it, and they were cool about that.
Nicole, I read about a case recently in Wisconsin. Can't remember the young man's name, but he had intimacy with his girlfriend who was underage. She became pregnant. There was no forced relations, and he was sentenced to 40 years, and they're fighting this now, and they're trying to get your governor to pardon him, even though he technically violated the law. The intent wasn't a violation. Do you think the law should be kept, or do you think the law should be, leniency should be granted? Do you know the case I'm referring to?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. Is that the one where I think the man went to Denver or something like that?
No.
Then I'm not familiar with that. But to answer your question, I think that children are children. No matter how much they feel that they're adults, they're children. I'm sorry. No matter how much they feel like they're adults, they're not. They're not. And we have laws in this country to protect our children.
As a reporter, where do you think the line should be drawn of the public's right to know?
I think we need to have more respect for the people that we deal with. We need to have more respect for our sources.
Do you think the paparazzi were entirely to blame or partially to blame for what happened to Princess Diana?
I don't think anyone's entirely to blame in any situation, but I think that I get upset about this issue because the paparazzi are not journalists in my eyes, okay? I feel myself as a journalist. I go and I collect all sides of the story, and then I'm going to tell you about it. The paparazzi don't do that. They're there to sell something. It's a type of merchandise. So I think that something needs to be done about that. We need to respect the First Amendment rights of the rest of the journalists in this country, and that's where my concern lies.
What journalist is your role model, male or female?
I really like Joan London because I think that she's me. She's the person, she's the woman next door. She wants to be fit, she wants to have a family, she wants to do all these kind of things. But I do not want to be Joan London. I want to work in Milwaukee or some kind of a smaller market where I can go home, at night or whenever, and be with my children. I want to be part of the PTA. I want to do all those things that you can't do if you are a national celebrity someday.
Nicole, do you think, concerning the O.J. Simpson case, that the media became too involved in that case, that it was too much of a media event, and at the same time, do you think we were given accurate information about it?
I don't know if we were given accurate information about it, to answer your questions in reverse, because I wasn't there, obviously, to collect those facts. But I think that, and the same thing is happening with Princess Di, her death. I think that we need to let it go. We need to say, this is what happened, and then, if you want to give a few other stories and, say, boy, this is how it's affecting the royal family, this is what's going on, that's fine, but then leave it alone.
Nicole, most of America still sees Miss America as a beauty queen. What is she really?
She's me. She's your next door neighbor. She's probably most of the women that are sitting on this panel right now, because she is intelligent and she's beautiful from the inside to the outside, and she can give everything she's got for 1 year to this nation.
Nicole, what would you change about television news?
I would take away some of the sensationalism, as far as there are hard copy TV shows and then there are regular news shows. I think those news shows need to go back to being news shows, because I think that there really is a population that will watch those.
Do you think broadcast journalists editorialize on the air?
There's an element of emotion that they try to bring about, and I think if you do it wrong, it's editorializing. It's saying, oh, we need to help these poor people, or these people who are, poverty-stricken, or these people who are homeless, or whatever. But sometimes you don't need to say anything. You can just show the picture.
What's your vocal selection going to be?
Someone else's story. It is from the musical Chess. It did a short run on Broadway here. And the first time I heard it, I started crying. And I don't have any idea why, to be honest with you, but it talks about a woman who's falling out of love, and she's not sure, although she was very in love at one time, she's not sure that that's working for her anymore.
Nicole, it says on your resume that your ambition is to get a BA in broadcast journalism, and it also says that you're a graduate of the University of Wisconsin, so I'm curious what you need the scholarship for and what your education plans are from here.
I have all kinds of student loans waiting for me, because that's how I funded my education. They're just praying, for a big chunk of money to come flying down. That's one thing. The second thing is I would actually like to go back and study in Spain, or to get some kind of a Spanish background, because I think that's very important in the United States to have that kind of background.
Time's up for questions. It's your time now to talk about what we haven't covered so far.
I just would like to say that I never realized how much this process would teach me. As far as I've had a lot of newspaper articles and television and radio and things like that at home that have come up, and I see myself one way, and you're seeing me one way, and those people who I worked for at the Bridge Bar in Fremont, Wisconsin, see me another way, and I never knew that people, my boss, I was a bartender at the Bridge Bar, he said to me in the newspaper, I've never seen her in a bad mood. I wish I had 10 more just like her. And I thought, I've never seen me in a bad mood, because I come home from there just stomping mad that somebody, broke something or whatever. And it's really fun. This whole process of being in Miss America has really taught me that it's important to be like that. It's important to give, and it's okay not to know how other people see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Good luck.
Good luck to you.